Welcome into this edition of the Tim Crowley Show. I'm your host, Tim Crowley, and it's been a great start to the baseball season. The World Baseball Classic just wrapped up. Congratulations to Team Venezuela. After a phenomenal run through the tournament, they defeat the United States 3-2 in the WBC Final. There are going to be segments like this that, time to time on the Tim Crowley Show, just have some stuff that maybe I don't have the platform otherwise to go in this type of depth. So I want to be able to do that after the phenomenal run that we just saw through the World Baseball Classic. Few things, first of all, point out. What an incredible win for baseball, as it was in 2023. Even more eyes on it this time. Parks were packed. Energy was fantastic. You have people that are never into baseball before that are getting to pump this coverage. I think kind of the Pat McAfee show, being out at workouts in Arizona, him being at the games in the knockout rounds in Miami certainly start to point to that. Just voices you had never heard talk about baseball starting to do so because they understood the electricity that was coming throughout the course of this tournament and how much fun it was. Miami was a great venue once again, and just the epicenter of what's been so many great baseball crowds over the last few years when they've been able to host the tournament there. Thinking about the Dominican fans, the Venezuelan fans the last few years, there's been bumps from the USA fans, but I don't think it's a question that they were overpowered in the knockout rounds by other fan bases who completely brought a new world of energy and made this tournament so special in what it's supposed to be and make it feel like playoff baseball in March. You think about the quote from Derek Jeter the other day that, people who believe that the WBC is bigger or feels different than the World Series haven't played one. I think it's still safe to say that, and you hear from players across the board what this means to represent their country. World Series championships are still everything, and those certainly that shouldn't take away from what it means to hoist the Commissioner's Trophy in October. But you can see the pride that every player in that tournament took out to represent their country, played their hearts out, show emotion. It was a different type of game, and most importantly, that's baseball at its best, when all of this culminates together for the excellent product that the WBC was, from energy to talent to production. We'll talk about the championship game too. Obviously, like we talked about, Venezuela 3-2, the final score, the same score that Team USA lost by to Japan in the 2023 World Baseball Classic, in an interesting game. Venezuela strikes first, continues to go into the eighth inning. This USA offense that's really struggled heavily and was supposed to be an absolute juggernaut didn't really turn out like that in the World Baseball Classic. But it's not that they didn't have a rally up their sleeves one final time. The Bryce Harper home run is going to go down as one of those that hopefully doesn't get forgotten in the grand scheme of this, because it was a massive moment, especially for Bryce, who had struggled so much. And what an interesting last few months it had been for him, right? The comments about Dave Dombrowski going on record saying, well, maybe he's not the same elite player he once was. Harper also really mechanically, the more you watched his swings, just felt behind a lot of this tournament. And that can happen, right? I mean, this has been part of the conversation about the placement on the schedule of the calendar of the World Baseball Classic. The guys are still ramping up. Timing can be weird. But there's also guys who do perform, so it's not an excuse for anybody. But Harper just seemed a little bit off mechanically. His swing seemed late. Hands felt low, was behind fastballs a lot of the tournament. Then in his final at-bat of the tournament, he has the biggest swing of it all. I loved the joke Davis called, better late than never. It was almost kind of funny, like a little bit of a jab. I know it wasn't intended to be, but he finally showed up. But it made the call good, and I appreciated that from Joe. What a moment for Bryce, the bat flip, the salute, the pointing at the flag, coming around the bases to tie the game. And then the ninth inning happens. Eugenio Suarez, huge hit, the 3-2 changeup off Garrett Whitlock, drives in a run. That ends up being the deciding run in the game. And we'll talk about Garrett Whitlock and a lot of other Red Sox a little bit more. But I think for Team USA, this is not to take away from the Venezuelan team, because they clearly had a different juice about them. Excellent talent. The pitching in the back of the bullpen throughout the knockout rounds was fantastic. But for Team USA, the way that they responded in building this roster after losing to Japan in 23, it felt different, and it was supposed to be a dream team because it was that on paper. Getting guys like Skeens to come pitch, who also pitched 2 games and not just one, like Tarek Skubal. I understand the contract implications. I understand that Scott Boras clients are probably going to operate differently in those situations. There's a lot more to talk about with Skubal, and I'm sure that's going to be the case even going into the next WBC or even as early as the Olympics in 2028. Then you look at the lineup. Having Aaron Judge immediately be announced as the captain, and basically as early as he possibly could, continue to round this lineup out with just big bat after big bat. It almost felt like from the start of this tournament that anything less than hoisting gold was going to be a failure, because it's only one championship in this tournament in the history for the United States, coming back in 2017. And it's a totally different roster back then. It's Giancarlo Stanton, it's Adam Jones, it's Marcus Stroman, who all had big moments, and that's not to take away from them. But this is the best lineup the Americans had ever put on paper in a situation like this. So to come up should still sting. It should still hurt. And again, this should be full props to Venezuela, because they were a phenomenal team that deserved to win and played like champions throughout the knockout round, and especially on Tuesday night against the United States. But the Americans do really have to look at how things are constructed the next time around. Is it little changes in the lineup card? Is it different guys coming in? Is it getting commitments from a few people you didn't have in 2026? Maybe. Maybe it's a few here and there. Then there's the whole Mark DeRosa situation. I think D-Rose been awesome for the game of baseball. And I don't think that's much of an argument, because, again, he does a great job spreading the game during his work on MLB Network. He does a great job recruiting. He obviously filled out a great roster that got back to the championship game for the second straight tournament. That shouldn't be taken away. But it's also hard to not do that when you had the roster he did. And then comes everything that happened during Team Italy game, the final game of pool play. Did he know that they weren't clinched? Did he really misspeak on MLB Network? You can kind of read between the lines here, right? I think it's pretty obvious to know that they didn't approach the game understanding that they were still playing. And that also shouldn't get lost in the story of the American team in this tournament. It is great that they got back to another championship game. It's great that they've been to 2 straight. But they also don't have a gold medal to show for either. And it came down to tiebreakers, and Team Italy continuing their hot stretch through pool play to get the Americans here, based on their own faltering graces in the Italy game, losing 5-0. The lineup, the pitching, probably handled differently. Had Mark DeRosa known, your ticket is not punched to the quarterfinals. You have work to do, because you're in a pool where Team Mexico, Team Italy, they're hot, and they're right here too. And now it's coming up to tiebreakers to decide if this dream team is even going to get to the knockout rounds. I think there's something to look at in 2030 when the next WBC comes around. Is it a sure foregone conclusion that Mark DeRosa is not back? It is interesting that he's managed 2 already, 23 and 26. Does how this whole string of events went between, obviously, the drama of the pool play tiebreakers and then having 2 great rosters that failed to come home with gold, how does that affect it in 2026? Venezuela, obviously the champions, they hoisted the trophy Tuesday night. But how about the unofficial champions of the World Baseball Classic? Because it's pretty fair to say that is the Boston Red Sox. Alex Cora had a comment back at spring training a few weeks ago that basically was along the lines, just paraphrasing, of, there should be an award given out to the MLB organization that had their guys the most ready to go. That was undoubtedly the Red Sox through this case. And it's really interesting for Boston, because coming in, it's a different roster this year. They are trying to make the playoffs in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 2017 and 2018. It's been a while since October baseball has consistently been in Boston. It still hasn't been in Boston because the Red Sox fell in the Wild Card Series, never hosted a playoff game at Fenway Park in 2025. Obviously, a lot of the offseason came down to, was there enough in the lineup? How do you let Alex Bregman walk? How do you miss out on Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber? We know the list of what the offensive concerns were. We know that this team in 26 is going to be built on starting pitching. Having a group, Garrett Crochet, Ranger Suarez, Sonny Gray, Brian Bayo, really good core in the middle of that rotation. You have an absolute horse and an ace up top. And then all the young pitching depth that's behind, and guys like Connolly Early and Peyton Tolley, we all know what the Red Sox are going to have to do to be successful in 2026. With that being said, there's room for even more optimism because of what we saw in this tournament. I loved the memes starting over in Japan during their pool play of the ideas of maybe we should put Fenway Park in Tokyo, or maybe the Red Sox should be wearing Team Japan jerseys this year, because, man, is Masataka Yoshida a different guy when he steps into that Japan jersey. It's a small sample size, I get it, but in his career, Masataka Yoshida in the World Baseball Classic, how about good for an OPS over 1,200? Yeah, it's 12 games, but he continues to perform. When Japan won it last time, he was the one who had the big 3-run home run in the semifinals against Mexico. goes deep a couple times in pool play this time. Obviously, it was pretty shocking to see Japan go down when they did against Venezuela in the quarterfinals. But Yoshida just continues to be a different type of player, especially at the plate. Maybe that's overlooking what he can still be as a major leaguer. This is always, I don't think this is ever, the whole Yoshida conversation has ever been about he can't hit, or obviously showed their struggles against lefties. He can be a pretty good hitter against right-handed pitching. I don't think that's ever changed. But what he is in the World Baseball Classic is pretty stunning. And that word can be used for a couple other hitters in the Red Sox lineup too, because they're going to need their left-handed bats to stay healthy, prove on 25 seasons, and show some power. That's exactly what Jarren Duran and Wilyer Abreu did throughout this tournament. Abreu, obviously the massive long ball that gives Venezuela the lead in a thrilling game against Japan, has the homer in the championship game as well. Abreu played with all kinds of emotion, and if he can be the guy, because this has been the conversation too, how many 20 home run hitters at all can the Red Sox produce in 2026? This isn't a Wilyer Abreu that if that continues, the Red Sox are in great shape, but maybe they even need Jarren Duran more, because the power dipped off a little bit last year. Sure, I don't think anybody expected to exceed numbers from that phenomenal 2024 All-Star campaign, but the trends that we're seeing from Jarren Duran in March, hitting lefties, hitting for power, a change in swing finish when the top hand comes off, the power's there. He tied for the lead in pool play home runs, had 2 against Team USA, both of them off lefties. There are so many trends across the board for this Red Sox team that if WBC trends continue, and that can be said for other guys too. Brian Bale looked really good when he did pitch for the Dominican Republic. Ranger Suarez got out there, tough Japan lineup. I'm not too concerned about that. People shouldn't be either. Across the board, what the Red Sox did in this tournament was really, I would say, surprising. Not a stretch to say that, but just putting emphasis on that word. And that's encouraging for a group that's going to need a lot of things to go right. Just knowing how good the AL East is around them and how everybody else in the division found ways to get better, or at least stay where they were as competitors last year. So what comes next? Obviously, we have to wait a little bit. You kind of get into this Olympic group of, every 4 years. You really do wait these out to get the magic of a World Baseball Classic back. It's going to be a fun run in 2030 to see kind of what the United States team looks like. Does Garrett Crochet, another Red Sox angle, does he pitch next time? Who is the rotation? How many young stars now that could be involved in this? Guys like Nick Kurtz and Connor Griffin. A lot of really cool young guys that could join Bobby Witt and Roman Anthony as the future of Team USA. Really fun to watch. And maybe, just maybe, because there is so much uncertainty about what baseball is coming. Do we have a lockout in 27? Can MLB players play in the Olympics in 2028? What's great about what we just saw the last 2 or 3 weeks is how much better baseball is when it's always on a global scale, and what it brings out when players are playing for their country and not just for one of the 30 MLB franchises. This was another major success. This was a great watch, and hopefully people understand what the World Baseball Classic brings to the sport on a global level. This time it was energy, it was passion, and the best possible product that we can get from the sport. And as they start to figure out what this is going to be moving forward, whether they change it on the calendar, keep it in March, what we just saw from an already thriving tournament setting, the last 2, particularly coming out of COVID in 23 and 26, can only be better in 2030, and that's something that baseball fans should be really, really excited about. Those are my thoughts on the tournament, but let's talk to somebody who was down there, boots on the ground with coverage. Let's shoot over to talk to Rob Bradford from Audacy and WEEI to get his thoughts on the Red Sox implications, the champions in Venezuela, and his overall time covering the World Baseball Classic in 2026. We continue on with our World Baseball Classic recap here on the Tim Crowley Show. So happy to be joined by the host of Baseball Isn't Boring through Audacy, also covers the Red Sox for WEEI. Rob Bradford joins the show. Rob, great to talk to you as always. You and I know that baseball is never boring, and it certainly was not during the WBC and another fantastic tournament for baseball.
Oh, first off, Tim, there's no human being I'd rather be talking to more than you right now. And yeah, it was an experience. I had never been to it live. I've never heard a crowd that loud. And I honestly even think the semifinal crowd might have been louder because it was all Venezuelans, where you mixed in obviously a lot of USA people in the final. But it was crazy. And then you hear the stories. We just talked to Wilson Contreras he just got back, and he's talking about how he played first base that last inning, and he had to keep sort of turning away to hide that he was crying, that entire inning. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to pick through, but it was crazy. It was crazy.
That's what makes this tournament great, is the emotion that was shown throughout of it. And I like that you touched on that, because it feels like the last couple times in Miami, some of the best games we've got in the entire tournament have been the semifinals. I think of Mexico, Japan a few years ago. Obviously, there was a lot of hype for USA and the Dominican Republic this time. What was it like being on the ground there in Miami, obviously taking the drive down from Fort Myers, but just knowing that this is a baseball atmosphere as this tournament continues to gain popularity, which it seems like it has this year, is really something that we never get to see in baseball quite like this when it comes around.
Yeah, I think that. So last time I went to the Puerto Rico Dominican game, but I didn't have a credential and I didn't have a ticket, and I just wanted to walk around the park. I just wanted to see the scene. So this time it was obviously much better, but I think that the semis, where it's unfortunate like Italy doesn't have a bigger crowd. But I think that everything was different. Every fan base was different. Every team was different. Venezuela was the loudest. Dominican, obviously, not that far behind, but they had to sort of share that crowd with the Team USA crowd. And I do think that one of the takeaways is Tim, that it's a cliche to say, hey, this team wanted it more than that team. But I don't think there's any question that when you get to the final, nobody in the USA is going to admit this, and maybe this isn't even a negative thing for the Team USA, but for me it was that Venezuela team wanted it so much that I don't think even the USA with the best intentions could have matched how much they wanted.
I think just again, you mentioned it, just that is the emotion that comes out in this tournament. And you focusing on the championship game, obviously felt like Venezuela had control of that most of the game. They just seemed like they were playing with an edge, like you talked about. Obviously, the Harper home run makes it fun. But just take me through, and you mentioned it, what the energy was like. Seeing a final out like that, obviously we're going to get to the Red Sox side and Roman being at the plate for that. But just when you look out as Venezuela's crashing the field after that final out, what is that moment like? And for baseball as a whole, like how much did this sport win from the last few weeks?
Yeah, yay baseball, right? Baseball's a real winner. I'll go through all my catchphrases. I think baseball it did exactly what baseball needed to do, much like the Trout Ohtani one from before, which was more than ever, more than 2017, more than ever, which is be the T-shirt gun, be the cannon into the regular season and get everybody excited. And also, not to be cliche or sappy, everything about that was why we love baseball, hinging on every pitch, analyzing every little thing, the emotion, like every part of it. And a quick thing about sort of how it felt at the end of that game, because I'm trying to compare the games, and I honestly, for people, Italy, I felt had more gumption than anybody. Like you felt like they were extracting as much as they can. Obviously, the USA didn't extract as much as they could because they were one of the most talented teams, and you didn't feel like they were going to come back after the Bryce Harper home run. It was almost like the Bryce Harper home run happened, and it was you're gliding along, the home run happens, yay, but then you're like, oh, they're not going to be able to compete. And really, for me, and I just told this to Wilson Contreras, is that when Harper hits the home run, most crowds are like, woe is us, well, we're deflated. That Venezuela crowd, the feeling that they had was, all right, you want to go? Let's go. Like, that's how it felt. Like, it felt that way. Like, we're gonna enact our will on this game. And so that was a big thing. And then, like you said, it was, you just aren't going to see more happier fans. I've seen happy guys at World Series, but this match is anything because they're all in the field, the same sort of deal. It's well documented how much it meant to Venezuela.
We've obviously moved through the knockout rounds. It feels like this has kind of been put to bed, but because this was such a weird thing for everyone to cover around it, I do have to ask you, What were your takeaways from the whole situation with Mark DeRosa coming out of pool play and how the Italy game was managed, how he kind of backed it up after the MLB Network interview? Like, is that one of the weirder national stories you've had to like cover the last few years? And just kind of what was your take on, kind of, did you believe him when it was okay, I just kind of misspoke, or was there something deeper there?
No, well, I'll default to Adam Ottavino. Obviously, was in the middle of it playing for Team Italy on the podcast, and he flat out said, no, they didn't know, like we noticed that during the game, and we're talking about in the bullpen, like what are they doing, like so that was a very real part of it. I think that was a reality, and if Ottavino's saying that, I don't have to. He was in the middle of it. He's saying this real time. What are they doing? So. That's just is what it is. And Tim, I mean, one of the things, I think the USA put their best foot forward as much as they could, but it did feel a little bit like they were trying to make this into, it was like a marketing thing way too much. In other words, with MLB Network, they had the reveals of big names in the rosters, but did they do it for the other teams? They made a big deal of Tarek Skubal playing. Well, Skubal pitched one game. They were trying to convince everybody, all right, we lost to Japan, but here we go. We're gonna show everybody. And they did that, and then they kept going with it, including that interview with DeRosa, and you know this as well, as much as I do. The ultimate sin, the ultimate internet sin, taking it down. And
100%.
Then on top of it, putting it back up edited. I mean, this is like Internet 101. So anyway, I don't know if it's fair to DeRosa to say, well, man, that was a defining moment for you, but it was a defining moment for him. And I don't know if this is fair either. I don't know if Mark DeRosa, who clearly has managerial aspirations, if he would be able to get past that. I mean, it's weird to say. It was like a thing. But there wasn't anything that DeRosa did in that tournament where you're like, oh, man, he really managed his ass off. Like, I don't know. I think, but what people will remember is all of that, which was, as you said, really, really bizarre.
Do you think that impacts his seat next time around, that maybe they look to go in a different direction, or you think, he'll have another chance to kind of run this back?
I don't know, because I was surprised that he was back, and again, I think that it was like this neatly packaged thing. Maybe I'm totally unfair, but it just felt that way with the MLB Network and listen, he got to the end, so it wasn't like he did a bad job the time before. So fine, run it back is good enough. But I do think when people look at why did USA feel different, and this is so weird to say because they made it they were tied in the 8th inning of the championship game. But why did it feel different? And so you're just trying to figure this out. They had good players, and maybe this is just they needed to turn it over, much like, other teams turned it over, like Dominican Republic or whoever. Maybe this needs to turn it over to a different vibe. I don't know. But the overall feel, it wasn't just me saying, the overall feel was that this Uber team, this dream team, just was not that. Wasn't that. They won the Dominican. It's unfair to say, but that's how it felt.
It feels like the real reality, and that's going to be something I feel like to follow the next few years, whether, that's going to the Olympics, if that ends up being a real thing for big league guys in 28 or the next WBC following that. Let's talk about the Red Sox angle. Guys getting back into camp the last few days. You talked to Wilson Contreras again, as you mentioned recently. Among the several Red Sox storylines, because again, it feels like you could label them the unofficial champions just because of how many guys made an impact. Where does your mind go into what matters the most? Whether it's the potential of what Duran and Abreu can be this year, obviously Abreu the big home runs, Duran doing it against lefties and kind of showing more power, or is it a different direction in the recency card of Garrett Whitlock has been really good in a lot of long stretches of pure dominance, but there's also now 2 periods of a hiccup from overuse, both in the playoffs last year and in the final this year. Where did your kind of direction go? Because there's probably about 1,000 different Red Sox takeaways from this tournament.
Yeah, I'll start with the Whitlock thing just because it's top of mind. Like, he came back in yesterday. I was sitting out there, and he was obviously still down. And I mean, obviously it was a tough one for him. But I would say to him is that for me, what I remember is, and put it this way, that Team USA team should have scored more than 2 runs. I mean, come on. And what I'll remember is the Dominican game. What was it? It was Soto. Was it Vlad and Machado? I mean, strikeout, weak grounder back to the pitcher, strikeout. He'll never face 3 better hitters in his life than that on a bigger stage. And what he did, that's what I'll take away from it. So, and then regards to the other ones, I don't, the stats aside, I think that overall, this can potentially be really impactful for this Red Sox team in ways that I never thought it would be. Let's start with Brian Bayo. Brian Bayo left camp, not good, working on a changeup. I'm like, this isn't good because he's not working on a changeup for the Dominican Republic. But sure enough, what happens? He gets another set of messaging from guys that he really, really respects. And that clicks. And all of a sudden, he becomes a different pitcher, not only there, but when he came back. Totally different pitcher. And sometimes that's how this works. Same thing with Roman Anthony. Roman Anthony had this great tournament. And I just asked him, hey, is this the most impactful 3 weeks that you've ever had in your baseball playing life? And he's like, yeah, think about that if he stayed here, if he wasn't called up. But because of the lessons, because of the messaging, because of the performance, because he's just hanging out with his buddy Alex Bregman again, he's teaching him about his swing, like, this helps the Red Sox. And then Abreu showing what he can do. There's a lot of guys, but I do think that there is that element of Tim, like, I've used this example, and I hesitate to use it because I was really young. I'm a very young man, but it's going to make me seem really old. But this guy named Bernard King. Bernard King played for the Knicks way back. Bernard King was an okay player. He makes the All-Star team. And then after the All-Star game, he goes on a run of like scoring 50 points a game. Why? Because all of a sudden he felt like he belonged. Like he realized that was a thing. I think the same thing can be said here. Now, who knows, the first week, maybe they don't hit any home runs. But I see no way, now that we've come out of it without any injuries, I see no way this can be a bad thing for the Red Sox.
Your style of coverage is super appealing to a tournament like this. Just the chance to go tell stories nationally while also working on your Red Sox stuff back in Boston. Is there a favorite storyline, favorite interview from the last few weeks, knowing that you had chances to talk to people at a lot of different stages, whether it was the exhibitions before the camps really fully got together, whether that was being in Miami? What's a favorite storyline that'll stick with you that you got to cover from this tournament?
Well, first of all, thank you. And I will also want to write back at you. Your instincts are very keen. And so you keep up the good work, and you're excellent at what you do. Roman and I have a pretty good relationship, and we can go back and forth and give each other crap. And he said he was like, yeah. I said, what were you thinking when you round the base? I'm always thinking of you when I hit a home run. And I'm like, okay, well, that's getting cut and that's getting put on my Wikipedia page if I had one. But I just think that the joy that these guys had, and also having the workout day for the U.S. was great. Tim, it was the chaos of the tournament is tough covering it. That's the thing I didn't expect. Maybe there wasn't a lot of access. It was you're being thrown into these things where you've covered night games, and all of a sudden you're not finishing till 3 a.m. And there's no clubhouse access. So that's the challenge. That was a challenging part about that. So I loved the workout day because USA guys were a little bit more available. Their guard was down. They weren't getting ready for a game. So I got a chance to talk to guys, not only Roman, but David Ross and Sean Casey and Adam Ottavino. And the highlight for me was the ultimate product placement of Adam Ottavino grabbing a Baseballs and Boring sticker without me asking him, and secretly putting it on the espresso machine, the Italian espresso machine. So Yeah, which I told him the story behind that was he has a podcast called Baseball and Coffee. I said, "What are you doing, man? Like you should have used this entire opportunity for baseball and coffee." And he got the stickers, but he forgot them at the hotel. And so I gave him this, and so he put it on the thing. Unfortunately, there was no home runs hit, so no cameras went to the espresso machine. But I think this is that we were talking after about who came out of this whole thing with their brand never being hotter, right? And there's a lot of guys, Roman and Vinny Pasquantino. I think that getting to see him in action, not only playing, but like he's a next level press conference guy. So anyway, it was just great. It was great, and now we go back to spring training, and we're like, really, like really.
It's countdown. What, 7 days till Cincinnati?
Yeah,
I know Alex has been trying to get there since February, but
yeah.
I end with this, and I loved the analogy you made earlier about this tournament hopefully being the T-shirt cannon into the regular season. First of all, whatever T-shirts are left, because I know you had one for pretty much every team in the tournament.
We
you know,
did,
maybe those
yeah.
are going out the last few days at Pebble
if,
Park.
If anyone's from Brazil and needs a Baseball Isn't Boring Portuguese shirt, let's just say we got a lot of them.
So looking ahead, and again, hopefully this is this kind of jet start into the season. If there's storylines that have carryover, and certainly in Boston they do, and maybe across the league they do, what storylines kind of excite you now as the shift goes from this crazy playoff style of March to now getting ready for a full 162 and kind of what's in store for the league this year?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. Is that, I think that it's unfortunate that you can't have every game where players are jumping over the rail and celebrating walks and whatever it is. It's just not how baseball is. But I think what this did, and you probably heard it as well from people in the market who were sort of fringy or maybe like, why do we care about the WBC? And then they get to the middle of it and they say, man, like baseball can be awesome. Baseball, like this is, because it's such a long season, that's the problem. Fantasy baseball is a lot harder than fantasy football for a reason, right?
No doubt.
It's a long season. So what we should do is we should understand that there are so many great moments. There are so many great storylines. And that's what I think this should offer the example for. It will. I think it will. And, all the while we put the earmuffs and the blindfold on into what awaits on December 1st. But don't mention, who cares? Who cares? It's a baseball season. Like I was just asked today, which is more likely to happen, the Olympics, these guys playing the Olympics or having a 2027 season. I'm like, they'll play a 2027 season. Baseball will reappear after the lockout. It's okay. It's not going away. So why we wait for all that? Just to enjoy what's happening now, which is right now is pretty easy to do, because I can tell you, just walking out of the Red Sox clubhouse now, like there's a lot of smiles, there's a lot of hugs, there's a lot of stories, all of it, all stuff that you would not have gotten with less than a few weeks to go in the regular season. If you didn't have that, you would be having guys just like, get me out of here, get me out of here, get me out of here. Now, little spring in their step, and that's not a bad thing.
Very fun season ahead following a phenomenal WBC. We thank you for coming on to talk about it, Rob, and have plenty of coverage for the Red Sox season coming up. But best of luck the next few days, and keep the sun off you in Fort Myers, and we'll get ready for you in Cincinnati and from there on out.
I will not keep the sun off of me, and I will. And I don't know. I guess I'll get ready for Cincinnati, but I appreciate you having me on, and it's highlighted my day. So I really appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff, and keep up the good work. Good stuff.